Hello, everyone. Hello. I'm Holly Miller. I'm the Dean of Libraries, and I'm here to welcome you to the Evans Library. We're so happy to have you here, and we're so happy to be having this 5th annual event with our great partners from the School of Arts and Communications. Just one housekeeping note, if you need to use the restroom, it's over beyond the stairway in that direction. And I also wanted to mention that we'll have several other programs coming up in this semester, and they are listed on the back of your program, so if you didn't get a program, make sure that you do. On March 20th, we'll have Music of the World. It should be fun. April 3rd, a celebration of women's rights to vote, empowering women from 1920 to 2020. On April 10th, we'll have Student Actions Now, 10 years of student sustainability innovations at Florida Tech. And in celebration of Earth Day, on April 17th, we'll have Earth Day 50 years, Seeds of Change. So I hope that you can attend some or all of these events. And now, let me introduce Dr. Robert Taylor, Associate Dean of the College of Psychology and Liberal Arts.
Well, thank you, Dean Miller. Good evening, everybody. I couldn't hear you. Could you do that again, please? That's much better, much better. Well, welcome to the 5th, count 'em, 5 African American read-ins, and it is a testament to the Evans Library here at Florida Tech that they let us come in here and kind of take over the place and serve a buffet dinner. Most libraries don't do that. But this is a place where a lot of amazing things happen, and we're thrilled to see you all here on a cool Friday night. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank all those students who participated in the African American Read-In Writing Contest. And everyone that did is a winner in my mind, whether you won a prize or not. And many of them you'll get to hear tonight. You know, a great thinker once said that those who don't study the past are doomed to repeat it. Events like this remind all of us, young and maybe not so young, of the way things used to be, and the way things could be and should be as we go into the 21st century. And I always think of Dr. King and the ideas that he had about love being able to change the world. And I don't know about you, but I think the world could use lots of love and lots of change right now. Well, anyway, I'm not here to lecture to you tonight because none of this will be on the final exam. Students always ask that. I'm going to turn this over to somebody who needs no introduction. If you've been in Brevard County for a few years, and that is our own, because she's a faculty member here, our own Rolanda Gallop. Where are you, Rolanda?
Take it away. Thank you, sir. Hello, hello. How's everyone doing tonight? Y'all know me now. Hello, hello. How is everybody doing tonight? Great. Thank you. Put some stank on that. Come on. Well, my name is Rolanda Gallop, as Dr. Taylor said, and I am a communication instructor in the School of Arts and Communication, as well as the faculty advisor for Florida Tech's Black Student Union. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our MC for this evening, someone who has shown her love and passion for her African American heritage since the day she stepped on our campus. Varaha Merrit is a senior information systems student here at Florida Tech. Growing up in Atlanta, Georgia, the cradle of the civil rights movement, she was raised in a household steeped in Black history, as both of her parents were part of the era where the trials, tribulations, and celebrations of the Black community in America were at its height. Her parents passed down to her the knowledge and history of her ancestors and community members. Varaha, in turn, has made it her personal mission to continue on the legacy of those who came before her in the pursuit of justice and equality for all. In 2018, she was instrumental in the formation of the Black Student Union, of which she currently serves as the president. The BSU has grown to about 60 members on campus, with closely connected ties to alumni members, upholding the mission to educate, embrace, and celebrate Black excellence in America. In addition to the BSU, Varaha also serves as the Public Relations Officer for the campus chapter of the National Society of Black Engineers. It is her hope that she can one day return to Atlanta, Georgia, and open a computer science department at her alma mater, Southwest DeKalb High School, where she feels she can make her most important impact on the next generation. So without further ado, I present to you this superwoman in the making, Varaha Merrit.
That's my name, but I don't know who that was. But thank you, Ms. Gallop, and thank you all for coming. Welcome again to the 5th Annual African American Read-In. We're all in for a treat tonight. It is a joy and a pleasure to be with you all this evening and see such wonderful and talented individuals here with us. So I'm not going to hold the evening up. We're going to go ahead and start. Tonight is a night to recognize history and legacy. We are pleasured and honored to have Ms. Lizzie Jenkins here with us to celebrate the legacy of what is widely known as the Rosewood Massacre, an event that forever changed the lives of those in her family and so many of their friends and neighbors. Her story is part of our history and therefore is a part of our story. Now for tonight, you're going to hear the term, our history, our story. And when I say our history, or you hear someone else say our history, I want everyone to repeat our story. So our history? Our story. Wonderful. I am also excited to see and hear from the winners of Florida Tech's first African American Read-In Student Writing Contest. We would like to thank Sam Dyer for your generous support for our first contest. Thank you. The Black Student Union's Executive Board had the honor of reading and judging the middle and high school entries, and with that, you are in for a very special evening, a chance to hear young minds create and elaborate on what it is to be African American. Our history? Our story. All right. And just because I am the BSU president, I'm going to do our call, so I hope they're ready. BS. You know. Oh, I love it. Without further ado, starting us off is Justin Trabeau, a student at West Shore Junior Senior High School who won the writing contest 7th through 8th grade category. Justin?
Hi, my name is Justin. I attend West Shore. I'm in 7th grade, and my essay was on Julius Montgomery. Julius Montgomery influenced many lives, and indirectly and directly, in his 90 years of life. He was born in May 1926 in Homewood, Alabama, and died recently on January 22nd, 2020. In high school, Julius played football and made model airplanes as a hobby. This shows that he liked making planes and was a dedicated team player, which led to him being the first black professional in the ever-still-growing space program. Quoted by Richard Paul, who wrote a story for the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum, he said, "Julius Montgomery is one of many stories about civil rights achievement in the standard high school textbook. Not everyone reached the ends of the civil rights movement by marching, picketing, and saying no. Many did, of course, but others like Julius Montgomery applied the principles of self-help and often accommodation to reach the same ends." In 1958, Julius Montgomery was encouraged by a coworker and co-founder of Brevard Engineering College, which would then soon become Florida Institute of Technology, to become the first African American to enroll. The college was renting classrooms from O'Galley Junior High School, which is now West Shore Junior Senior High School. which happened to be an all-white school. This posed a problem, and the superintendent of Brevard Public Schools threatened to kick them out and if they allowed a colored man to attend. Julius Montgomery was a special man in that he understood when and when not to be part of something. When Julius got word that if he was allowed to attend the institute, the school board would make sure that Brevard Engineering College would not become what it is today, so he withdrew his application. The president of FIT said to Julius that once they were in their own facilities, he promised he would be welcome into the school, which he later was. FIT acknowledged the sacrifice that Julius Montgomery made and was awarded an honorary doctorate on January 13th, 2020. It was great to see such a great man rewarded. FIT was established to keep engineers in the area, and the high-tech growth of the entire area may not exist if it were not for these events. This has allowed for better employment opportunities and more sophisticated communities for all ethnicities. In fact, if Julius Montgomery didn't remove that application, I might not be alive today, since my parents met through FIT. He changed many lives, including mine, and he should be remembered.
Thank you, Justin. 7th and 8th grade entering writing contest. You're already better than me. So I was not thinking about that in the 7th and 8th grade. Keep writing. Now we will have a reading by Clifton Miller, followed by a poem by Simone Smith, and then a song from Professor Keith Gallagher.
I don't think I need the mic. Good evening. I'm Clifton Miller. Tonight I'll be reading a piece from A Letter to My Son, article written by Ta-Nehisi Coates. A letter to my son. Last Sunday, the host of a popular news show asked me what it meant to leave my body. The host was broadcasting from Washington, D.C., and I was seated in a remote studio on the far west side of Manhattan. As satellite closed the miles between us, that no machinery could close the gap between her world and the world for which I had been summoned to speak. When the journalist asked me about my body, it was like she was asking me to awaken her from the most gorgeous dream. I have seen that dream all my life. It is perfect houses with nice lawns. It is Memorial Day cookouts, block associations, and driveways. The dream is tree houses and the Cub Scouts. And for so long, I have wanted to escape into the dream, to fold my country over my head like a blanket. Okay. But this has never been an option, because the dream rests on our backs, the bedding made from our bodies, and knowing that the dream persists by warring with the known world, I was sad for the host. I was sad for all those families. I was sad for my country, but above all, in that moment, I was sad for you. That was the week you learned that the killers of Michael Brown would go free. The man who had left his body in the street would never be punished. It was not my expectation that anyone would ever be punished, but you were young and still believed. You stayed up till 11 p.m. that night, waiting for the announcement of an indictment, and when instead it was announced that there was none, you said, "I've got to go." And you went into your room, and I heard you crying. I came in 5 minutes after, and I didn't hug you. I didn't comfort you, because I thought it would be wrong to comfort you. I did not tell you that it would be okay, because I have never believed it would be okay. What I told you is what your grandparents tried to tell me, that this is your country, that this is your world, that this is your body, and you must find some way to live within all of it. I am speaking to you as I always have, treating you as the sober and serious man I have always wanted you to be, who does not apologize for his human feelings, who does not make excuses for his height, his long arms, his beautiful smile. You are growing into consciousness, and my wish for you is that you feel no need to constrict yourself to make other people comfortable. I would not have you descend into your own dream. I will have you be a conscious citizen of this terrible and beautiful world.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now we will have Simone Smith. She's a BSU member.
I apologize, I'm losing my voice, so I'm sorry for that. Okay, so I'm going to be reading A Caged Bird by Maya Angelou. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wing in the orange sun rays, and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade wind soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams, his shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom.
I'm excited. Next, we will have Professor Keith Gallagher sing us a song.
Check, cash, ATM, card, credit. Ready? Some people tell me the worry and blues ain't bad. It's the worst off feeling I most ever had. Some people tell me the worry and blues ain't bad. It's the worst off feeling I most ever had. Minutes seem like hours seem like days since my baby started love that way. Minutes seem like hours, the hours seem like days. Oh, since my baby started love that way. Morning my sleep, hear my doorbell ring. Look for my baby, I don't see a thing. Morning my sleep, I don't want to hear my doorbell ring. I go look for my baby, I don't see a thing. Get out of bed, look around for my shoes. Got a case of them walking blues, yeah. Get out of bed, look around for my shoes. I got some stinky feet, mean old walking blues. Some people tell me worry and blues ain't bad. It's the worst off feeling I most ever had. Some people tell me the worry and blues ain't bad. It's the worst off feeling I most ever had. It's the worst off feeling I most ever had. It's the worst off feeling I most ever had. That's Robert Johnson, the father of us all.
Thank you, Clifton. Thank you, Simone. And thank you, Dr. Gallagher. Are you guys ready for more? Our history? Well, that was weak. Our history? Thank you. We will now hear from a short story written by Merritt Island High School. I like to think we own the island, but we don't. Merritt Island High School student Leela Farrow, our writing contest winner for the 9th through 10th grade category.
Hi. The natural hair movement to me is one of the biggest movements. Whether it's a bun, afro, braided, or in your face, embracing your natural hair in Black culture is beautiful. In the 1600s, African American women's hair was shaved off, a way of degrading these women and cutting away a big part of them that expressed their background. Cloth was given to them to cover their heads when it started growing back, as well as keeping their heads warm, heads that lacked the culture they once displayed. When freedom was ours, straight hair was the desired trait. Natural hair was seen as too nappy and ugly. So perms were Black women's friends, to straighten the curls away, then curl the trendy big ones in. What white women did, Black women were pressured to follow, because everything a white woman did, because everything a white woman didn't do was unwanted. When Black women were seen as beautiful, restrictions were put on them. The Tignon law from Louisiana was put in place to hide natural hair with headdresses. They had to wear them so no suitors would see them as beautiful and try to marry them. But Black women retaliated by having patterns, gems, and many colors designed on those headdresses. Still, Black hair was a major target and is a big part of Black women and Black culture as a whole. In the 1600s through 1700s, there was a curly hair movement. Afros were a staple of this movement and popular in this era. It was well known for disco, but it isn't that simple. Wearing natural hair out became a serious consequence. Black women were harassed, shamed, and even arrested on the streets for wearing what they were born with. People didn't like natural hair because of the skin tone it came with. Since these punishments were extreme, the natural hair movement faded away. Perms and wigs came back to hide every inch of curly hair. But the 2000s came back to fight for this freedom. Fight for every curl to be shown to the public. Hairstyles from African roots were shown on the women of the Black community, of my community. My white mother and Black father gave me this wild head of curls I possess on my head. My elementary days were spent wishing for spaghetti straight hair with pretty highlights, wanting my mother's fair skin tone to fit in with my classmates. I was blessed enough to never be discriminated against in my young years. Quite frankly, the girls wanted my hair. But it's sad to see I wanted pin straight hair for years. That my school pictures reflect a girl with gelled up hair that was brushed so hard that a single curl can be seen on my scalp. Every television commercial and magazine showed a beautiful white woman with long, straight hair. Every once in a blue moon, they would show the token Black girl with a perm in her hair. And though I saw a woman in public wear their curls with pride, I could never with mine. The constant, perfect image of straight hair was glued in my mind. I wish I could go back in time and let my hair down. That I would have realized the compliments I received in the Black women that wore their hair out with pride was a part of the natural hair movement. That people have finally accepted curly hair and seen them as beautiful. Every inch of my curly hair shown in public represents the fight that was put up to love them. The harassment, shame, and the hatred they once had has turned into acceptance. The natural hair movement opened up expression to Black women. As this movement continues, I pray in the near future everything will be accepted. That women who wear box braids or dreadlocks will not get you kicked out of school or fired at work. That these protective styles will not be grimaced at because they aren't the next big trend. And while we work on accepting every braid, continue to embrace your curls. Put the straightener down and just enjoy what you were born with. Never let another person say your hair is ugly and that it would be better if it was straight. You are blessed with those curls, big or small. Join the empowering movement by embracing them. Enjoy your natural hair with all its beauty and allow yourself to see that you are beautiful.
Thank you, Leela. I feel convicted. It's not my fault, though. I had a perm for 10 years. It wasn't my fault. I don't have a perm now, so. Embrace the curls. Next up is the original work by is an original work by Florida Tech student Deidre McVeigh, one of our contest winners in the college category.
Dirt under her fingernails from tossing around rocks on an unpaved road. Sounds of a rooster crowing, signifying a new day has begun. The smell of clay, hot air mixed with the scent of curry chicken cooking up in the kitchen. Jamaica, her homeland. These sounds, only distant memories now. Now in a foreign country. America's melting pot, they say. She sits, clenching her teeth, nervously, awaiting for her name to be called. No name is called, only rank. Private, they shout. She runs off of the bus carrying her duffel bags, following behind a line of many others. Her new life began, or maybe this was an end. My mother. 8 years United States Army represented, 1 deployment, Vietnam veteran, honorable discharge, my mother. New journey again, land of the free, they say. 1 woman, 2 children, new life. She reaches her goal, no mountain too high to climb, first black female firefighter, driver, engineer in her city, history made. Labeled for not only her deeds, but also her color. 1 woman, now 4 children, my mother. She pushed among the pain, heartbreak, discrimination, racial slurs, never showing an inch of fear. Sacrifice, my mother. I witnessed once my mother cry when she lost her discrimination case. No, not because she lied, because others who witnessed it were too afraid to testify. My mother. Each teardrop mixed with brown makeup stained her white shirt, signifying the deep hurt. My mother. My young mind couldn't comprehend, my small hands lifted her chin. My mother. Home always open to the needy, refrigerator always open to the hungry. No child ever motherless when she is around. My mother. A gentle spirit of great beauty and worth. She is not just mom, ma, or mama to me. She is a hero to others. My mother. Thank you.
Thank you, Deidre, and congratulations on winning again. There is something about mothers. I love my mother. How many of us love their mothers? Yes. And my mother's story is part of our story. Our history? Our story. Okay, we're getting there. So thank you again. Now we will hear from Dr. Marva McLean, a writer and teacher at Southwest Middle School, who will read from her book, From the Middle Passage to Black Lives Matter, Ancestral Writing as a Pedagogy of Hope.
Ashanti woman, black woman free, nanny of the Maroons. She stole freedom and pulled it to her bosom and claimed it for me. Tonight I read from my book, which uses Nanny of the Maroons as an allegory of perseverance, strong will, determination, and courage. Nanny of the Maroons is Jamaica's national heroine. She was taken from her homeland, Ghana, in the late 1600s and brought to Jamaica, but she did not stay enslaved. She escaped to the mountains, where she developed a guerrilla warrior system and gave the British such a fight that they negotiated with her for a peace treaty in 17 1739. And today the Maroons are in Jamaica on their sovereign land, an autonomous body within the country of Jamaica. And my book presents to 4 educators, community developers, college students, the concept of storytelling as a valid method of teaching students, especially students of African descent, to not only engage them, but to place their history, our story as a center point within the curriculum. And so I tell them that she came to Jamaica aboard a slave ship around 1685. Her captors intended to push her into a life of servitude. I tell them that Nanny looked to the mountains and set her sights there. She escaped and set about stirring up trouble for the oppressors. I tell them how the British hunted her. They called her Obia woman, old hag, and sought to undermine her. I tell them that Nanny battled and beguiled the British until her courageous death in the 1750s. I tell them, a member of the Ashanti tribe of West Africa, she understood the complexity of the land. She embraced the earth and used its resources to build her military strategy and to nurture her people. I tell them that Nanny was known as the most rebellious of the Maroons. Revered as Queen Nanny, she used guerrilla tactics she learned from her native Ghana to confront and disrupt slavery in 18th century Jamaica. She established a Maroon community that challenged the institution of slavery and helped to bring it to an earlier end. The British were so challenged by the fortitude of this Ashanti warrior and her 4 brothers that they offered her a peace treaty in 1739. And now I bring alive Nanny to you. She sits under the kinde tree, staring out above the mountain range, breathing in the magnificent beauty of the land. Her gaze follows the clouds drifting across the evening sky, and a soft moan escapes her body. She begins to chant, the sound rumbling from within, and she rocks back and forth with the movement, calling on the ancestors for guidance, for at the break of dawn, she must be ready to lead her people in what she knows to be a necessary bloodshed. Nanny of the Maroons, Ashanti warrior.
Thank you, Dr. McLean, for sharing your work with us. Our history.
Our story.
Up next, we will have Alton Edmund, who is going to be doing our next reading as we jump into our next book, Our History. Our history? All right, we had to let food digest. I understand. Ow.
Hey There Poetry, written by Blue Water. Cool and refreshing you are to me. Those intimate twists of verbs and nouns that make my vigor flow without bounds. Breaking loose that intense feeling, causing strength and inner healing. Moonlight whispers come from you. Stimulate pleasure in the midnight blue, speaking softly of the stars, caressing me with your breathtaking charm, making me feel that I am the one as the river flows and runs. You are so special, so special, yes you are. From you I feel warmth, release, and love. You take me from an ordinary day and bless me with much, so much to say. You are a welcome and cool delight. Together we venture to magnificent heights. So wonderful to have you in my life as we wine and dine with words into the night. Hey there, poetry. Love, there's so many things I've got to tell you, but I'm afraid I don't know how. 'Cause there's a possibility you'll look at me differently, love. Ever since that first moment I spoke your name, from then on I knew that by you being in my life, things were destined to change, love. So many people use your name in vain, love. Those who have faith in you sometimes go astray, love. Through all the ups and downs, the joys and hurts, love. For better or worse, I still will choose you first. Thank you for your time.
I feel some kind of way because I love music, soul child. If I could sing, I'd have been right up here too. Now let's turn the page and welcome Mackenzie Kalolu of West Shore Junior Senior High School, whose poem won the 11th through 12th grade category. Then we will have a reading from Professor Mellisa Crofton.
My poem is called The Tides of Life. Good night, don't die. Hopefully I'll see you at sun's rise. But if I don't, I'll know you're here, waiting for death to lend you an ear. You were beaten and tortured, your screams filled the night, the inky blackness echoing night's fright at that horrible sight. I waited for your return, hoping it was not in an urn. I saw your figure's silhouette, and from my vantage on the hill, I watched it sweat. Stumbling up the slope, ragged breaths escaping from your throat. As you neared, I ran to aid, praying you were not too far to be saved. You collapsed in my arms, a scared little boy, beseeching a God forever on hold. Together we'd sweat, and together we'd worked to drag you back from the hearse. We finally made it to the bed, the trail behind us stained potently red. After hours of pain, you fell into slumber, tossing and turning as you went asunder. As darkness took hold, clouds covered the moon. I feared that the clouds would cover you too. As my eyes adjust to the newfound night, I find myself seeing in a different light. I think to myself how I ended up here, on the edge of a straw bed, wallowing in fear, stroking the hair of a babe in distress, praying to God that he will progress. The house that I'm in seems more like a shack, with fake windows to mock what I know I don't have. I look out the door, still left ajar, seeing the manor to whom I belong. As rage fills my heart, despair fills my mind. You can't fight an evil older than time. Perhaps one day they'll understand that we too are human, just as old and as scared. Perhaps we were wrong to call you the devil, as you were to compare our value to pebbles. You see, we're the same, all the good and the bad. We just have to learn how to live with the fact that people are broken. There's no changing that. But if that should happen, it won't be in my time, for the pain is just starting to ebb into life. The boy at my side takes his last ragged breath, his body finally coming to rest. There comes a time when we all must die, but please, God, don't let that time be tonight. I'd pray that the night would not take you to flight, but ho, the sun's rise has just come into sight. Now your soul can be free, you can dance in the wind, and sprout angel wings as you shoot to the end. The more you suffer in life, you're rewarded in death. which is why you must thrive in the highest ascent. I watch your soul leave, make its way to the sky, in the form of a bird as it flies oh so high, and it shoots through the clouds away from this life. I watch this unfold with glistening eyes as the dove flies you away to the other side. But I cry not for you, for what's there to mourn? You've gained your freedom, you're already gone. But for myself, I cry a sad song. I can't help but feel pain in spite of our love, for the envy I feel towards your mourning dove. You left me here alone to starve, my very sun gone in this forlorn morning song. Bereft of my purpose, I wander the fields, not giving heed to the whip at my heels. As I walk, I think back in time, to a time much more simple, a life once divine. Oh, how I miss watching elephants roam in the African plains from that life long ago. My own tribesmen, they came, put me in a sack. I was sold for provisions, or maybe an axe. At the time, I was a scared little girl, so I cried and I waited for that sack to unfurl. It was carried away, and they swung it around, while I tumbled around in my burlap bounds. The sack was then handed to some strange-sounding men. They were the last thing I heard before my head hit the deck. When I awoke, I was out of my sack. The ship had set sail, there was no going back. It's funny how much can change in a day. One day it's for fun, the next there's no play. Chained to the floor, I listen to waves. As bow cuts through water, I hear steering change, traveling off to my American fate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mackenzie, and congratulations on winning your category. Up next, Professor Mellisa Crofton.
With over 6,000 slave narratives in existence, Harriet Jacobs is the first known African-American woman to author a slave narrative. She escaped in 1835 and published Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl under the pseudonym Linda Brent. I read these excerpts to you not to showcase the horrific injustices of slavery, but to highlight the strength and perseverance of the survivor. I was born a slave, but I never knew it till 6 years of happy childhood had passed away. We lived together in a comfortable home, and though we were all slaves, I was so fondly shielded that I never dreamed I was a piece of merchandise. I trusted to my parents for my safekeeping and liable to be demanded of them at any moment. On one sale day, I saw a mother lead 7 children to the auction block. She knew that some of them would be taken away, but they took all. The children were to be sold to a slave trader, and their mother was brought in by a man in her own town. Before night, her children were all far away. She begged the trader to tell her where he intended to take them. This he refused to do. How could he, when he knew he would sell them, one by one, to whomever would command the highest price? I met that mother in the street, and her wild, haggard face lives today in my mind. She had wrung her hands in anguish and exclaimed, "Gone, all gone. Why don't God kill me?" I had no words wherewith to comfort her. Instances of this day are of daily and of hourly occurrence. To a hole I was conveyed as soon as I entered the house. The air was stifling, the darkness total. A bed had been spread on the floor. I could sleep quite comfortably on one side, but the slope was so sudden that I could not turn on the other without hitting the roof. The rats and mice ran over my bed, but I was weary, and I slept such sleep as a wretched may when a tempest has passed over them. Morning came. I knew it only by the noises I heard, for in my small den, day and night were all the same. I suffered for air even more than for light, but I was not comfortless. I heard the voices of my children. There was joy and there was sadness in the sound. It made my tears flow. How I longed to speak to them. I was eager to look on their faces, but there was no hole, no crack which I could peep. This continued darkness was oppressive. It seemed horrible to sit or lie in a cramped position day after day without one gleam of light. Yet I would have chosen this rather than my lot as a slave, though white people considered it an easy one, and it was so compared with the fate of others. I hardly expect the reader would credit me when I affirm that I lived in that little dismal hole, almost deprived of light and air, and with no space to move my limbs for nearly 7 years. But it is a fact, and to me a sad one, even now. For my body still suffers from the effects of that long imprisonment, to say nothing of my soul. Countless were the nights that I sat late at the little loophole, scarcely large enough to give me a glimpse of one twinkling star. There, I heard the patrols and slave hunters conferring together about the capture of runaways, well knowing how rejoiced they would be to catch me. Season after season, year after year, I peeped at my children's faces and heard their sweet voices, with a heart yearning all the while to say, "Your mother is here." Sometimes it appeared to me as if ages had rolled away since I entered upon that gloomy, monotonous existence.
Wow. Thank you, Professor Crofton, for sharing that narrative. So up next, we're going to have an original work by professional basketball coach Corey Williams.
All right, how's everybody doing? Fine, good, okay. I cannot sing, so, you won't be getting the joys of that tonight. Instead, let me try to get this, all right, there we go. Instead, I just wanted to I found inspiration to speak on my life and some things that I've experienced throughout the years. And I just wanted to share it with you guys. Who am I? Am I cursed or blessed? I feel as though I'm constantly fighting with myself for peace and understanding as to who I am. See, I was taught that history so much that it started to make me feel ashamed of who I am. Things that made me feel like it was hard for me to fit in, pulled me from one side of a kind soul and wisdom to the other side of misguided anger and frustration. I've always had to ask myself, who am I? The history we have been taught was just slavery. And leaders like Garvey, Newton, Malcolm, they weren't learned for me for many years, but not in my schools. I had to research on my own. See, this put me in a confused state of mind. Was I just to be sculpted to be like Martin, or was there more to my identity? So I dug deeper and searched for self and heritage, because when heritage is taken away from a people, self-identity can always be created by someone else. Everything took me back to his word, but when I started to read, I only understood scripture for what was preached. I needed more. I researched, and just to see that in scripture, I was part of a hidden identity, one whose ancestry went astray from the Most High, from what the Most High had to say. A covenant that still exists today, hair that defies gravity, a heart of gold, wisdom and understanding, and skin that can be absorbed by the rays of the sun. I'm from a nation that was built on tribes, a lineage from the Messiah who came and died. See, it never occurred to me I'm special in the skin I'm in. There's no mistake, for I am his to represent who he is. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Fortunately enough, my father is really big on finding out who you are as a person and your purpose here on earth. And once you find that, you'll be able to maneuver through any struggles, obstacles, tribulations that are placed before you. So that is a very important quest I find I take to heart, as Ms. Gallop mentioned earlier when she was introducing me, that it is my hope to return back to my hometown and open up a computer science department because my high school did not have it. Therefore, I came to Florida Tech pursuing computer science with not a lick of experience, and then I get here and I'm like, it's not working. So that is my purpose. My family's big on education, and therefore I feel like education is the key to most. As he said, we didn't learn Black history like we should have in the textbooks. I took AP US history, and our history was 3 pages in the AP US history book. And that plays a very important role as you're coming up, adolescents and youth, thinking that you're some small script in the bigger script, and really the script is about you. So thank you, Corey. And thank you for the thank you for the participants that have gone thus far. We're going to continue. Our next presenter is FIT student Zhenee Brown, who is our second writing contest winner in the college category.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zhenee Brown, and I wrote a poem that I titled "An Homage to the Black Authors That Came Before Me." I was 9 years old when I first saw my reflection, not in a mirror of glass, but in a digression from the media set before my eyes. This revolution of thought was not televised. It was on pages. In a book, words like birds are no longer in cages, they rise, and like a native son about to meet his demise, they fall upon our heartstrings. These caged birds sing, and in their song I see my face. A dream deferred is not erased. It festers like a sore, a whisper in the night saying I can be more. Because when my ancestors wore the sun as a shawl, I too draped the horizon on my shoulders. I saw my reflection in outlines and borders of an invisible man who, in the bright lamp light of a street light in the dead of night, became the phantom nightmare of those who lived unaware of what a privilege it was to be a blank slate. But we lived with the lie that our value would depreciate, not knowing that the cost of liberty is less than the price of repression. In this knowledge of self, we are in a recession. I saw my reflection, 2 warring ideals in one dark body, still bearing the chains of ships so shoddy. For as their eyes were watching God, they were in the hands of the ungodly. When men know so little of men, that ignorance brings forth poverty. Yes, here is strange fruit and bitter crop. From the poplar trees they would drop, and the roll of thunder carried their cries. And in the reflection, I saw my eyes. I was 9. Thank you.
Thank you, Zhenee. Such a well-written homage to the storytellers in our community. That was absolutely excellent, absolutely excellent. Now, if you made it this far, you're in for a treat. We will hear from Mrs. Lizzie Robinson Jenkins, who has dedicated the past 26 years to preserving, informing, and memorializing the events that occurred in Rosewood, Florida in January 1923. At the dawn of a new year, an angry mob converged on this town of 300 Black residents, brutally killing several residents and forcing the rest to leave. More background on this event is printed on the inside of your programs. She is an educator, researcher, historian, storyteller. Ms. Jenkins founded the Real Rosewood Foundation Incorporated in 2003 to make sure history is not forgotten. Now please listen as Mrs. Jenkins shares her story.
Good afternoon. Remind me at the very end to tell you a secret about this little jar. I hate that picture. I'll tell you about that later. But anyway, Black history. Black history is America's history. It's our history. I want to thank Professor Gallop, Terry, my good friend, sister, Terry Jones, for inviting me. And I'm honored to be here. And I have done 28 years of research on this subject. I know everything about Rosewood. The one question I can't answer is how many people were living in Rosewood on January 1, 1923. And every time I tell this story, I always tell it differently. But anyway, I'm going to start with a song. My mom was my historian, 8th grade scholar. The reason she was interested in Rosewood because her sister was a school teacher there from 1915, 1923, and survived and told only my mother her story. My mom was 20, she was 28. It was so painful, my mother said to me, to her 4 children, I'm sorry, my other brother had passed. I want you all to, one night, 1943, I was age 5, cold. I want you all to sit on the settee. Mama is going to tell you a story about Rosewood. How many of you in here know what a settee is? Okay, a sofa for the younger people. When she said, Mama's going to tell you a story about Rosewood, roses in the woods came to my mind about my sister. She referred to her sister, the school teacher. Her name was Mahalda Gussie Brown Carrier, as sister. That was her affectionate name for her. I'm going to tell you a story about the Rosewood Massacre that sister was involved in. Me, age 5, had no idea what a massacre meant. My sister, 11, brothers, 9 and 7. So Mom started her story. And she told us about the Rosewood Massacre. My siblings went to sleep. I didn't, because her sister was my first homeschool teacher. And she taught me at home because she had lost her job in Rosewood, so we became best friends. And I remembered everything my mom said on this particular night. But I went to sleep too. But I didn't forget the intimacy of what she said to me about her sister. And the next morning, I wanted to hear more. And I looked at my sister when we were eating breakfast. You know, back then, parents cooked on a wood stove, you know? You don't know what I'm talking about, the younger generation. Biscuits, eggs, and we lived on a farm too. Chicken if we wanted to, or whatever was left over. And I looked at her as if for her to tell me the story. She said to me with her eyes, don't go there. But as I got older, that story just, it attached itself to me and stuck with me. So I took it to school, to college, to work, and now I'm bringing it to you. And she said to me, my mom, when she knew I was interested in it, really interested, she said, now what I want you to do is research, because I have told you over the years enough information to give you a jump start. I want you to authenticate this story, document it, tell it truthfully, and never attack anybody, not even Fannie Taylor, because you didn't create the history, and I didn't create the history, but it's history, and that's the way I tell it. So don't think I'm going to attack anybody. Mom said Fannie Taylor was not the only person slipping around, she just got caught, okay? So this is real. But she did tell me, she said, baby, I'm going to dictate a song to you, because before you speak, you need to sing a song. I said, Mama, you know I can't sing. She said, oh, I know that. But anyway, she did the lyrics, And I kind of like put it to a country tune because I like country music, and it goes like this. I'm not Whitney Houston, and I just told you I couldn't sing. I want you to listen to the words. It tells you the story. And once it's over, I hope you're ready to ask questions. If not, I'll give you a few more details. But anyway, Rosewood, Florida borders Highway 24. A destroyed town, no blacks live there anymore, where emptiness resides in the silent sacred breeze. Life there no more, only nature's moss-hung trees. And the next 4 lines, I want you to listen to it real closely because I just added these 4 lines a couple of months ago. I'm talking about myself now. I was forced out of Levy County in broad daylight, bullied by Jim Crow men. I'd leave town before night. They were blocking my roads with research, forcing me out of town. I learned early from my mother how to stand my own ground. And I do that until today. Rosewood, Florida once was a growing community, linked with chains of love and family unity. Families were linked with wholesome friendship, and each link represented a special kinship. In this productive southern town of Rosewood, here the families bonded and they understood each other's lives in their unique neighborhood. Lordy, 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 Rosewood used to be real good, till a little old sleazy woman with a cheating heart triggered the Rosewood massacre, and the colored had to depart. They ran for their lives in the middle of the night. They'd heard a mob was a-coming to start a hideous fight. Run, 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 the children, run for your life. Oh, Lord, hide anywhere, just try to survive. Children followed their leaders with fear in their souls and almost froze to death because it was so cold. They were told not to move by the ones in charge, but trying to keep silent was awfully hard. Messages were sent to them by Sheriff Bob Walker. Listen up for John Wright, the designated talker. The Cedar Key train conductors were told to pick up in Rosewood. Standing by the tracks with the lantern, his young school teacher stood, waiting in desperation to carry out the sheriff's plan and round up the hidden survivors to board the midnight train. The sheriff and the store owner worked around the clock. Oh, Lord, inform the train conductors just when and where to stop to pick up the men, women, and children who were hiding out and bring them to Archer, Florida, traveling the same old route. Bob Walker and John Wright took on a daring risk. Put the survivors on the train, Lord, and sent them off with a kiss. Notified the Gainesville families to be on the lookout for their kin. Told them the train was coming and told them exactly when. William and John Bryce headed on up the track, dropping off other survivors, not taking the time to look back, counting heads and making a list, doing what they knew they should, to report to Sheriff Bob Walker back down in Rosewood. Waldo, Stark, Lord T, Maxville, the train kept chugging along. Baldwin, Callahan, K-Town, Briceville would soon become their home. The fanny tale of lie had ruined their lives, and her story didn't set too well. And deep down within each survivor's heart, they knew one day they'd have a story to tell about Rosewood, Florida once was a growing community until the fighting started in 1923. No one ever thought Rosewood would go down in death. That brought on so much pain and unforgettable distress. Countywide shame, statewide shame, worldwide shame, that brought on so much painful shame. Oh Lord, and unforgettable distress. Thank you. Thank you. That was for my mother. Now let's hear it from me. I'm kidding. Yes, that's my mom's song, and it did tell the story. How many of you have seen the movie? Okay, now the movie did not portray the sheriff, remember, as being helpful. He knew everybody, black and white, in Levy County, and he knew that it was his duty as sheriff to get the blacks out of Rosewood alive, because Cedar Key, Rosewood is 9 miles from Cedar Key, is a peninsula, one way in and one way out. So he worked very hard in order to get them out of town with the help of the Bryce brothers, 2 train conductors, and the store merchant, John Wright. And then there were unsung heroes on the train, so when the train stopped in Rosewood, they exited the train and they helped load the, help aboard the men, women, and children. So the song really tells the story. Would you like me to tell you more, or would you like to ask questions at this time? Okay, make me work. Let me tell you, I see y'all recording me, but I don't have a problem with that. I remember the first time I told the story. This was like in 1993. I was at the festival. I don't have a problem. I was at the festival in White Spring. And the lady said, oh, may I record you? I said, oh, no. She did anyway. And guess what happened? When she got to the end of the recording, it went click. And it stopped. Okay, it was at the end of her whatever. But everybody looked around, and I said, well, people are going to record anyway. But if that's your way of telling our history, I don't have a problem with it anymore. Okay, but anyway, you want to hear more. I look at this song, I know it, but I look at it, and I'll tell you why I look at my paperwork. Because your eyes, if you were standing here, and if you were me and could see how you all are looking at me, I tell you, your eyes just, it warms my heart, and I cannot face, well, not face you, I just can't look back into your eyes, because you're asking for more, just like you said just now, more. But anyway, December 31, 1922, Gainesville, Florida, the KKK had a celebration in downtown Gainesville. They had a regional celebration wherein the KKK came from the southern town, the southern states, Georgia, Alabama, maybe South Carolina, I don't know. And they gathered there. So on January 1 is when Rosewood happened. It's really started in Sumner. Rosewood was a community, and at one time, the economy was timber, sawmills, pencil making, lot of cypress was there, but over the years, it diminished. And we have heard more than one report when it was started in about 1855. Rosewood was founded by Charles M. Jacobs, a white man who was a contractor. He was a banker, and he built the house that we now call the John Wright's house. He married Mary Jane, and a few years later, Mary Jane, remember I told you Fannie Taylor was not the only one? Okay, so Mary Jane decided she was going to divorce Charles M. Jacobs, and she and John Wright, she married John Wright in 1898, and they lived in the house. They moved in the house. So, I know why I went there. But anyway, I just had to put that in there about Fannie Taylor. Was not the only one. Mama said she just got caught. But anyway, there were a whole lot. Oh, and by the way, you never saw this in the movie. Rosewood, Sumner, Cedar Key was a party town. The people from Jacksonville, Briceville, I talked about Briceville, where the train stopped. Okay, on the other side of Briceville is Jacksonville. Every Thursday, they put on a special train from Jacksonville to Cedar Key to party. Okay? And Mama said, my mom, her sister told her, whenever the women came from Jacksonville, you knew that they wanted to party because they would wear a slip undergarment, red, and they made sure it was hanging. Hanging, it means that the dress was a little above the slip. That's Mama's story now. But you know, it kind of makes sense. If you're soliciting, why not do it dignified? But, but anyway, the reasons Sylvester Carrier carried a shotgun. He didn't play, if you saw that in the movie. And he carried a shotgun to make sure the people that came down on the train going to see the key, they didn't get off in Rosewood and come to Rosewood and, you know, mess around with their women, the black women. James Taylor, who was Fannie Taylor's husband, hated him. And Sylvester Carrier hated James Taylor as much as he hated. Okay. But anyway, like I said, I don't know how I got to that part. But anyway, on January 1, Fannie Taylor, or before then, this is when she got caught, was having an affair with a white man that lived in Gulf Hammock. Let's say Gulf Hammock is here, Rosewood is here, and this is Sumner. Fannie Taylor lived in Sumner. Two men carpooled from Gulf Hammock daily to Sumner. And by the way, they didn't have to come through Sumner to get to, they didn't have to come through Rosewood from Gulf Hammock to get to Sumner. So Sumner is where Fannie Taylor lived. Her husband, James Taylor, was the foreman of the sawmill in Sumner. So after everything in Rosewood diminished, like the lumber and the cypress, Sumner opened up a sawmill in 1897. So the people, some of the blacks from Rosewood migrated to Sumner to get a job. But on this particular morning, January 1, Fannie Taylor was really tired and said to the young man, I can't do this any longer. We are going to call it off. He said, no. The reason she had time to take up time with him, because I told you two men came from Gulf Hammock to Sumner. One of them went to work with James Taylor when he oiled the mills at 4 a.m. One of the guys went to work with him at 4 a.m. And every morning at 6 a.m., he would come home for breakfast, James Taylor. And the other guy didn't have to go to work until 6 a.m. with the second crew. So he had time to mess around. So on this particular morning, Fannie Taylor had a fight with her lover because she was ready to call it off. He said no. A fight ensued. She was left bruised. she knew her husband would be home at 6 a.m. for breakfast. She knew that she was going to have to explain to him why she was bruised severely. The magic word or the historical lie, when he saw her, he wanted to know, well, what happened to you? And you know what she said? A black man assaulted me. And I don't believe she used the word black man. Okay, we know what she used. Okay, see, you all are so smart. And he was outraged. Her husband, James Taylor, was outraged. So he called in his friends from the sawmill, come and help me. We've got to catch this black man that assaulted my wife, and he ain't no longer here. I understand. He left the house before James Taylor got to the house because he knew he was coming home for breakfast. He had always left early, but this morning he left earlier because he knew the damage he had done. So what he did, James Taylor, her husband, the foreman, called the prison, which was in close proximity of Sumner, and had somebody, the deputies, to bring over the dogs. Okay? So the dogs came, then his friends, he telegraphed the Gainesville law enforcement officers because he knew the day before then that the KKK, had a ceremony there. So he needed help. Of course they came. The smart ones went home. But there were some came, the newspaper said approximately 300 to 500 came to help out. So when the dogs gathered and the men gathered, they found something that he was wearing, I assume. You know how they put it to the dog's nose so that they could sniff. So the dogs went out of the house and straight to Rosewood because in order for this guy, her lover, to get to Gulf Hammer by foot, he had to go through Rosewood. So he went straight to my uncle's house. The Masonic knock. Aaron in bed with his wife. Jumped up, ran to the door, opened the door. White man standing there. Closed the door. He thought it was a brother. Then he ran back to the house. Well, you know I'm supposed to help him because he's a Mason, although they were not friends. So he put on his clothes, and his wife said, my aunt, where are you going? And he said, you know how it is when you men don't want to tell women what's going on. So he didn't tell her. But anyway, he went back to the door, helped this guy next door, and I don't know how far next door was, but his cousin Sam Carter lived in the house next door, and Sam Carter owned a wagon. Do you all know what a wagon is? The older people. So, hitched up the wagon, you know what I mean? Hitch, okay, up the horse or the mule to the wagon, heist this young man on there, Fannie Taylor lover, and took him from Rosewood to Gulf Hammer. Dropped him off, married man with children. He was safe. He was out of it. But guess who was going to suffer? Aaron and Sam Carter. They had heard from this guy what he had done, and they knew the mob was coming. So before they came from Gulf Hammer, Rosewood, they went around the way by Sumner to really see what was going on. And so they saw this crowd gathering. So Aaron went back home to his wife and said to her, we need to go to Aunt Sarah's house. Aunt Sarah was a pillar of the community, and she was Sylvester Carrier's mother, the shotgun-toting man. So Aaron was so disoriented, he said, we need to go to Aunt Sarah's house. She said, why? I'm sewing. This is my winter break. I've got to clean house. But noticing that he was so uncomfortable, she agreed to go with him to Aunt Sarah's house just to satisfy him. He was so afraid when he got to the house, they had to put him to bed. They actually put him to bed. He was just that afraid. So, you know how gossip spreads in the community. So the word had gotten out that something was going on. Aunt Sarah, I told you, was the pillar of the community. So people gathered at her house when they wanted to hear what was going on. So the women in the community started coming to her house and bringing their kids and gossiping. Oh, you know, talking. Just trying to find out what was going on. So the mob came to Rosewood. And no, the mob came to Rosewood. However, they didn't find anybody at Aaron's house. But the dogs led them there. Then the dogs took them to Sam Carter's house. So they felt defeated. They went back to Sumner, KKK. And what did they do? They started drinking moonshine. You know, Levy County was dry back then, so they made moonshine. How many of you know what moonshine is? Good. Everybody made moonshine. My daddy made moonshine. But it was for coughs and colds for the children. Medicinous. But for them, you know, they had fun. But anyway, when they got drunk enough, build their nerve, they said, well, we got to go back and we got to find this black man or these black men. So they came back to Rosewood at night. They didn't find them at the house, so they said, well, they got to be to Aunt Sarah's house. That's where everybody hang out. So they came over to Aunt Sarah's house, and sure enough, they went inside, found Aaron in bed, put a rope around his neck, dragged him to the car, tied him behind the Model T, and dragged him from Rosewood to Sumner. You know what? He didn't die. If it had been a highway, he probably would have, but it was a paved road, he probably would have died. But it was a rut road. How many of you know what a rut road is? Okay, a few people. I'm not going to tell you, not right now anyway. But they found Aaron at this barrel. It was cold, remember I told you? Fire around the barrel, and everybody was drunk when they got him there. And they started beating him with the gun, the butt of the gun, and kicking him, and almost beat him to death. However, Sheriff Bob Walker knew he had to save these people, so he was riding everywhere, begging the Cedar Key train conductors, because Cedar Key was a hub, a train hub. No one would help him out. He begged, and all of them told him no. So when they were beating Aaron, the sheriff knew they were not up to any good. He came back to Aaron, and they were harassing him. Where were you last night? What happened to Fannie Taylor? Although they knew. And Aaron was with Sam Carter, so he said something about Sam Carter before he passed out. That was good enough for them. They said, well, he is any children in the house, damn, they're dead. So let's finish the end off. And the sheriff drove up and said, no, don't. He said, I'll finish the end off. Throw him in the car. And they did just that. I'll take him in the woods and I'll kill him. However, he got in that little car where Aaron was, and he took him as fast as it would take him to Gainesville, and went to the jail, and he said to Ramsey, Sheriff Ramsey, put him in jail, and you better not tell anybody he is here. So he said to the jailer, you get those two black doctors here in Gainesville, Dr. Eyre and Dr. Parker, you bring them here and get him well. Take care of him. So he jumped in his car, Levy County Sheriff Bob Walker, and as fast as it would go, he went back to Rosewood because he knew the people there. And he said, well, I better go to Aunt Sarah's house. So he went straight to Aunt Sarah's house before he went to Sumner. The women in the house heard the car coming, ran to the door and said, they got Gussie. That was my aunt. They had come back to get her because they were not satisfied with what Aaron had told them. They put a rope around her neck. They didn't drag her. They put her in the car. See how nice they were? And they carried her in that same little pit, barrel and, drinking. And they harassed her. Where was your husband last night? At home in bed all night long with me. She answered that question 5 or 6 times, and on the last time she really got sassy, uppity, stand her own ground. At home with me in bed, they had guns to her head, and you will just have to kill me because that's where my husband was. And somebody said, let's rape the bee. They did. They dragged her away from the barrels, and they did just that. So when the sheriff left Aunt Sarah's house, he went looking for her. Got out the car, he didn't see her. They heard his car coming too. So when he got out the car, he said, where is she? Nobody said anything. They were quiet then. The brave bully men, they were quiet. Where is she? And someone pointed, she assumed, in her direction because she didn't hear them say anything. So he went back, he found her. Shoes off, clothes ripped off. Cole took his jacket off, put around her, and had to come by them to get her to the car. And you know what they called him? In-lover. And she told my mom, said she thought she had a bug. It was a bug in her eye, but it was a frozen tear. So he brought her back to Aunt Sarah's house. Dropped her off, back to Cedar Key to beg, to plead for help. Put on a train. No one said anything. So on day 2, all of this happened day 1. Day 2, James Taylor sent Sylvester Carrier a message. We are coming, he felt proud then. He had a crowd. We are coming to Rosewood to kick your, and Sylvester said, you got to bring it to get it. Sure enough, Sylvester prepared on day 2. All of his black kinfolks that worked at Sumner, that lived in Levy County, he said, come, I need you all. They are going to invade Rosewood tonight. So they all came, and they were waiting in the house, behind the barn, behind the tree. So when they heard those Model T or T models, which is it? Model T coming down the rut road, they were ready. They were waiting. But they didn't know it. The KKK didn't know it. So the dog started barking. When they got close enough to the dog, they shot the dog. Paulie Wilkerson, and these are the only 2 confirmed by the newspaper, but they were right in the newspaper too, that only 2 whites were killed. I'll tell you how many were killed later. But anyway, Paulie was a deputy. He kicked the door in. He was bad. Sylvester was sitting there with twins on his lap to keep them quiet, and the women were walking through the house to keep the other children quiet. Shot him, dead. The other person with him, the second person got killed, was too close to turn around. So before or during the time the 2 of them were killed, somebody shot Aunt Sarah, Sylvester's mother, and the women in the house yelled, oh, they shot Aunt Sarah. Sylvester yelled out, shoot, everybody shoot. And they started pumping their guns. These men, all of these 300 or 400, I don't know how many came to Rosewood, did not have time to turn around to get in their cars because they were down a rut road, to turn around and go back. So they were stuck there. The cars were there. They couldn't move them because they came in a group behind each other. So some of them yelled, oops, I've been hit, I've been shot, help. And the others that could go back to Sumner, they did. But many of them did not. So the next day, but before the next day, the sheriff really begged and got the Bryce brothers that lived in Bryceville to agree, they were brothers, they owned the train, to come and help him. And they said to him, Bob, the only way we'll do this, it has to be early morning, and we'll come and we'll help. So early morning, day 4. But before then, after the killing, I told you the sheriff was always on the scene. He came to Aunt Sarah's house because he knew that there had been a fight and the people had gone back to Sumner, and now they wanted to help Bob. Bob, you better go down there and see what them N doing in Rosewood. Just tell them we just got our butts kicked. That's all they need to tell him. So he came anyway. He saw the people on the ground, dead and dying. He stepped over them because the women were in the house early morning, day 3, looking at him when he got out of his car, and when he opened the door, he thought he was going to see a scene, and there were the ladies standing there. And he almost passed out, and he said, Gussie, take these children and these people over to John Wright's house. He's expecting you all. However, John Wright didn't know anything about it. He was not inspected there, but it was in walking distance. It was from their house across the railroad track to the store. So my aunt walked the people to John Wright's house. He was scared to death when he saw all of these black people coming to his house. However, his wife and he put them up in the grocery store, hid them out in his house, has a 2-story house upstairs in the basement. And the sheriff had told them that John Wright was expecting them. So by the time they got there, the sheriff was there. And he said, you keep them here until I get a train in. Then he went back to see the key. And he got them to confess or agree to come to Rosewood to pick them up. And that's when they left early morning, remember I said, on the train, and got to Archie and all those different places. Okay, now I'm going to pause here for questions. Do you have any questions? Did I miss anything? I know I missed a lot, but let me hear some questions. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Good question. They have, each year they host a family reunion. Not one has done any research. I have invited them. They, on my Facebook, they'll comment, but they don't come around because they don't have anything to offer. But I get the praise on my Facebook. Thank you for keeping our history alive. Now, have I gone to a family reunion? One. But they are still here. I spoke in Bartow yesterday. There is one in Bartow. She didn't know about it, but when I go back, she said she's going to be there. So we have a very close bond. I know who they are because remember they did a reparation from the state. I have all of their names. Some of them are no longer living, but I know who they are and they know who I am. But they are welcome. It's our history. It's America's history. Yes, ma'am. Oh, it closed in 97. You had, in order to qualify for the Rosewood Family Scholarship, we all had to do family trees, okay, in order to qualify, which connected you. So when I did my aunt's family tree, I did it on her side, and it was 8 of us, 8 of them, because I did all of the work, and they said, oh, you don't qualify because your mom is living. I didn't have a problem with that. And it wasn't a lot of money, the 8 of them, $20,000 together. Okay, but it was a recognition. Okay, we did wrong. Okay, it was an acknowledgement. Mm-hmm. Question? I know you all have some questions. Yes, ma'am. Do you know who wrote the paper? Okay, now I tell you what the blacks said because they were there. They said it was more than 2 whites killed. My research says it was 5 blacks, okay? But, and that wasn't, I didn't mean it like that. You know who wrote the paper, but you know they lie. And distort, and another thing, ma'am, the reason they did not want, they wanted it secret and quiet because they didn't want people to know how many people were actually killed. They wanted to keep that a secret. They followed, my aunt lived 25 years, and they followed her for the remainder of her life. She would come to our house and stay at our house on the weekend, hiding out. They would come, and you know, black people, most of them live down a lane, one way in and one way out. And they would come to our house and rev the motor of the car to let us know that they were out there watching. I remember one day playing in the yard, and my mom was in the kitchen, and she heard this Jeep. And the 4 of us were playing in the dirt. And she came to the door, "Get in this house." And we jumped up, ran in the house. 2 white men came up in a Jeep in front of her and said, "Where's your husband?" My mom, I remember, put her hand in her bosom and said, "He's out back." Dad was 7 miles away. And she carried a switchblade, too. But I don't think she had a gun that day, but they didn't know that. Remember I said my mom would stand her own ground? Yeah, she did. She protected us. My dad, all of his life, was scared to death of white men because he didn't want to be lynched. My dad bought 285 acres of property in 1940. The purpose of that property, he made, because we were not allowed at parks and libraries. We had our own park. We had our basketball court, our baseball field, and anything you can put on 285, and lots of hard work. Tobacco, peanuts, watermelon. I got corns in my hand today from hoeing. Yes, ma'am. That is the question I can't answer. Okay. That's the question I can't answer that. Because the census, the records were, when the first time I went down to Rosewood doing some research, it wasn't the first, maybe the second. I was in the basement, in the cellar of the courthouse with books on the table, and I was just researching, and in walked about 10 white men around my table. I didn't look up. I continued, but I saw them. I smelled the tobacco. They all had on camouflage. I was scared to death. And I finished my job in about 30 minutes. I went up to pay for my dittos, my copies that I had made. And she said, "Ma'am, what's your name?" I said, "Elizabeth Penterchatter." She said, "Will you spell Penterchatter for me?" Penchhatty. She said, "Spell that again." And guess what? I couldn't spell it the same way because I was lying. I spelled it differently. Anyway, I got in my car and I went home and I told my mom, I said, "Mom, I can't do this any longer." And I told her what happened. She said, "Okay, take 2 or 3 days. You'll be all right, and go back and finish my project." I just knew.
Where did you grow up?
Archer. Archer, Florida is my hometown. Yes, near Gainesville.
So wasn't that far away from Rosewood?
Oh, no, 24 miles. Uh-huh, yes. Yes, ma'am. And you name, yes.
The details that you have is very amazing.
Thank you.
Write this all down, and how did you get all this?
Mom gave me topics and told me what to research. Like I said to her, "Mom, what's my dad's side of the family?" She said, "McIntyre." And I said, "Well, where are they from?" She said, "Cedar Key." So I was in the Smathers Library one day, and there was Henry McIntyre, born in 1848, in Cedar Key census. But guess what? There were no parents. Because back then, if they wanted to break the cycle, they changed the name of the parents. So I don't know who they are. And I have looked everywhere. There were tricks, And there were a lot of people. I followed one white lady in Rosewood, single, from a kid all the way to an adult. She was born white, but the same name went all the way, and it was still Mary, and I'm not calling her last name. But then she was black. But it was the same lady, and the reason I know that I was able to follow that on the census. So back then, if a baby was born to a white couple or a mixed couple, if the baby was white, it went with a white family. If it was dark, it went with a dark family. They didn't care who. Oh, that's why Mom said we are all 3 degrees of separation. Okay, so yeah. And my grandfather passed for white. He was something else too. That's another reason why I stand my ground. Papa was invaded the KKK, but he was not the only one. Your grandparents probably did too, and great-grandparents, you just don't know it. But anyway, if they were white enough, they went to these KKK meetings with hoods, with their regalia. What is it called? Oh, I'd say that. On. They were dressed out. Okay? People didn't know, but that's how we network. We had to know this information in order to survive. To hear your plans. When do you plan to lynch one of us? Okay? We were there right on target. How did I get on that subject? I was talking about Rosewood. But that's just black history. That's history. And that's how we have survived, y'all. It was from my aunt, the Rosewood history that I talked about. No, my aunt told my mom the Rosewood history, but the other history, my family history is from my mother. Uh-huh. And then it was like she told me McIntyre. That's all I needed. So I found that information and proved, who I was. So everything, 28 years. You had a question?
Yeah.
Any more questions? Okay. Because they snuck that picture in. It's not true. Now the reason I can tell you it's not true, the sheriff I talked about, I took this picture to Atlanta, Georgia, and I asked his daughter. She said, that's not my father. I have told the people not to put it up there, and every time I do something, when I see that picture, I just don't like it. Because as I have done my research, one day I was talking to a group of people like you all, and a young lady, white lady, stood up and said, Mrs. Jenkins, John Wright is my great uncle. And I said, and don't you leave here before we talk. She didn't. And she said to me, that's my history too, Mrs. Jenkins. And I have some pictures. Do you want them? I said, of course. Not only did the John Wright's niece give me pictures, his granddaughter, who is a teacher in Houston, Texas, gave me her family pictures. The train conductors, when I went to Briceville, knocked on the door of the granddaughter and told her who I was, she said, come on in here. Where were you 5 years ago when my grandmother was living? She knew everything about Rosewood. I don't know anything, but I got some pictures to share. So I have supporting evidence. Everything I talk about, I have supporting evidence to prove it. That's why I said I didn't like that picture. Because it's not, they don't like it either. Okay, but once Wikipedia gets it, they just spreads it everywhere. Okay. Last question? About what? Oh, yes, I am. Oh, I can't miss it. My goal is to build a Rosewood Museum on 27 acres of land. This is different from my dad's property. And by the way, we still got that property in the family. We're going to build a museum in recognition, in memory of my aunt, on the property she grew up on, 27 acres, okay? This is rosewood authentic soil. It's called History in a Jar. And what we're doing, we're selling it for $19.23. I know you figured out already why $19.23. Smart people. And what we're asking, if you would buy a jar, your organizations or whatever, keep it until we do our centennial, which is 2023. Put your name on it, give it back to us, and we are going to put it in the museum for life. I'll have 2 jars tonight. Okay, so everybody can, oh, I want to buy, but I can get it to you if you're interested. Now, that's what this is about. And it has my website, and by the way, our colors are red, black, and white. And it says 1/1/1923 Rosewood Dirt History in a Jar. Okay, and we have other things. My website, I have cards back there. My website is rosewoodflorida.com. My Facebook is Lizzie Robinson Jenkins. Oh, and would you like to announce that? Okay, this is an announcement. National Congress of Black Women Space Coast Chapter Annual Attitude. Guest speaker, Lizzie R. Jenkins, Executive Director of the Real Rosewood Foundation. I know you all don't want to hear me again. Luncheon fashion show in celebration of Women's History Month, Sunday, March 22, 2020, 1:30 p.m. at the Space Coast Convention Center, 301 Tucker Lane, Cocoa, Florida. Cost $40 for tickets. Okay? Free tickets, tables of vendors. Call, and there is a number on here. Okay? So I know you don't mind supporting this because you got everything free tonight, didn't you? Okay, so I have answered your question, and I know one person has really enjoyed it. Yes, ma'am. I got one more question. Okay. Okay. I want us to stop hating on people. And I mean that from my heart. If I can stand here and tell a story, it's ugly, okay, and when I go home, you know what I'm going to do? Get in the bed and sleep it off. It's very depressing. If I can stand here and tell this story, you can at least meet me halfway, and let's change that hate into love. You have to plan to hate. Love comes automatically. If not, respect. Respect each other, because people don't know if I hate them or not, but I respect everybody, and I pray not to hate people. I have a friend, I'm going to go Democratic Republican right now. I have a friend who is a Republican. He's my congressman. In July 25th, 2019, he went on C-SPAN, and it's on my Facebook. He talked for 4 minutes about Rosewood and keeping it alive, and he let them know that I was his constituent. I have friends in my party that tell me, I said, look, politics has nothing to do with history. He's my friend, and he is my friend. He called me today. He's my friend. People get mad at me because we are friends. When we talk, we don't talk about politics. I think he hates politics as much as I do. We are talking about getting this museum built, and he is going to help, and I say that to say whatever. But I can respect him, and he respects me. That's all. Okay? All right. Thank you all very much. You are a good audience.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Jenkins, for telling the story. This is our history. Our history. The more you say it, the more you believe it. So, we have reached the end, the very end. I would like to thank every single last one of you who came out for joining us tonight. I would like to send a special thank you to our participants, if you're still here, to Justin, Clifton, Simone, Dr. Gallagher, Leela, Corey, Deidre, Dr. Marvin McLean, Mackenzie, Dr. Mellisa Crofton, Ebube First Love Worship Team, Alton, Zhenee, and Mrs. Jenkins again. Thank you all so much for participating. We would like to thank the audience, you all, for coming out, and the organizers of the African American Read-In, Nancy Garmer, Linda Kahn, Rolanda Gallop, and Joy Patterson. We would also like to give a big thank you to the School of Arts and Communication for their sponsorship and of the courtesy of the food as well. And, you know, every W counts, so I would like to thank myself, because I never hosted, so. If you all are interested, the BSU is hosting our last Black Cinema Friday following this. We will be showcasing the movie Dolomite. So if you would like to stay afterwards and watch that, feel free. However, if you travel home safely, thanks for coming again, and have a great night. Oh, I think so. I hope so. I don't know. Pictures? I don't know.